So you've been accused of gaslighting. You know, this is actually a very common occurrence in today's society. 30 years ago, nobody really knew the term gaslighting. Today, it is so overused that it is certainly used incorrectly. What should you do if you have been accused of gaslighting and that person really does believe that you're guilty? Understanding what the word means is going to be your first step. Now, there's plenty of resources on the internet, but I would like to suggest that you consider some of the prior videos in this series if you haven't seen them already. If you've looked at the definition and you realize I didn't do anything wrong, then what you're going to do is when you approach the person, you're going to focus on the word abuse. And the reason for this is that both the old school and the modern day models of gaslighting agree on one thing, and that is that gaslighting in both models is considered a form of abuse. So what you're going to do is you're going to ask that person, are you really accusing me of abuse? Now, that's a very strong word, and we're going to use it deliberately for a reason. When you call gaslighting what it is, when you come out and call it abuse, that's going to help the other person understand the gravity of the accusation. The word abuse is going to bring it back to its original definition, regardless of what model you're working with or what that person's working with. And you're basically going to flat out ask the person, do you honestly think that I am guilty of abuse? The traumatized person might then be able to come to an evaluation of the situation with greater clarity. They might be able to say to themselves, you know what, this is kind of silly. I am kind of being a bit extreme. This person has never hurt me. This person has never given me any reason to doubt their trustworthiness. Maybe I am overreacting. Just know that in the modern day model of gaslighting, am I overreacting? Maybe I'm just being too sensitive. That's considered something called self-gaslighting. And I'm going to address that in the next video. But what we're aiming for is we're really hoping that the person does question their belief that you're gaslighting, because let's face it, it's important to question ourselves. We're not always correct. So just know that if you are working with a traumatized person, you're going to have a little bit of patience, treat them with TLC, because it's going to take them time to evaluate how you are different from that other person who was gaslighting them in the previous relationship. You don't need to convince them of your innocence. What you're doing is you're just trying to open the lines of communication, and that word abuse is really going to bring a great deal of clarity to the situation. And then hopefully this will resolve the issue and you can go back to being friends and building that trust. Now, if the answer is yes, then what you're going to want to do is decide, not right then and there, before this happens, before you even engage in this conversation, you're going to decide what your limit is. And let me explain what I mean by that. You're going to ask yourself, how many times am I going to try to convince this person that I'm innocent? Now, I can't tell you how many times that is. That's going to be up to you. Everyone has a different point in their unconscious mind as far as when they're going to be convinced that this other person can't be convinced, if you know what I mean. So I come across a lot of clients who are so desperate to resolve the friendship or the relationship, or maybe there's not much of a relationship there, but what matters to them is how the other person sees them. And so they'll stop at nothing to try to convince that person that they're wrong about them. And the bottom line is you do not have the power to change somebody's thoughts. You don't have the power to change somebody's opinion. And so if somebody is hell-bent on believing that you are gaslighting them, you need to ask yourself, when am I going to be convinced that they're never going to change their mind about me? And it's very, very important to set that limit with yourself, because if you don't, what's going to happen is you're going to constantly rehash this over and over and over again. And so you're just going to have to set a limit for yourself and say, you know what? I'm only going to tell them once. If there's still miscommunications, all right, fine. I'll be willing to give this discussion a second chance. Or maybe you're somebody that says, you know what? 3 strikes, you're out. If they don't understand where I'm coming from by the 3rd conversation, then I'm out. You need to have that limit set in your head, because if you don't, you're going to be at the mercy of this person indefinitely, and you're always going to be trying to convince them that you're innocent. I always say to my clients, you cannot reason with a person who is unreasonable. In this moment, that person is being unreasonable. And if they're not willing to sit down with you and listen to your side of the situation, then the next thing you're going to have to do is leave them alone. And by leaving them alone, you're demonstrating that you're willing to relinquish control. And for people who are traumatized or suspicious that you're trying to control them, this will help them feel safe. So once you reach that limit, you just walk away. You just kind of say something like, you know what? I said my piece. I'm going to let you believe what you want to believe, and you know where to find me if you change your mind. That puts the control back in their lap. That if they decide that they've come to their senses, or maybe they realize that they have been overreacting, then they can come to you. But you don't want to force the relationship, because that's going to make you seem like a controller. And that's also going to solidify the idea in their mind that you really were gaslighting them. And it's entirely possible that after you do this, that person may never come back. And if they never come back, then you're just going to have to accept the outcome. And so if they're interested in maintaining that relationship with you, they may need to do some soul searching and some work on themselves. They may owe you an apology, but you don't push that. You don't ask for it. You leave it in their hands. You want to make them feel as safe as possible. You want to make them feel like they're in control with the direction of this relationship next. So again, that phrase is, I'm going to have to step away from this relationship because I'm not comfortable being accused of abuse. And this is also a very good phrase to memorize if you're being accused of gaslighting by somebody who's actually gaslighting you, right? I mean, think about it. The person accusing you of gaslighting can be doing this because they're trying to make you out to be the bad guy. By removing yourself from that situation, you are blocking their access to being able to abuse you even further. I mean, you don't want to give anyone any excuse to think that this is like an ongoing thing in your relationship. So the minute somebody accuses you of abuse, absolutely, it's perfectly wise to say, you know what, since you honestly do think that I'm being abusive, I'm going to have to step away from this relationship because I'm not comfortable with the idea that you're going around accusing me of abusing you. And if you have to walk away, you have to walk away. And this is just a static video. Please know that it's not going to fit into your exact situation perfectly, but hopefully this will serve as a guideline for you when you encounter this problem. I'm Jen Guerriero, and this is Poisonous People. Thanks for watching.